This investigation revealed that Donald Trump engaged in years of illegal conduct to inflate his net worth, to deceive banks and the people of the great state of New York. Claiming you have money that you do not have does not amount to the art of the deal. It's the art of the steal. And there cannot be different rules for different people in this country or in this state. And former presidents are no different.
Now, in particular, James said former President Trump inflated the square footage of his Fifth Avenue triplex from 11,000 to 30,000 square feet, thus getting a higher valuation on it. The lawsuit also claims former President Trump inflated the value of Mar-a-Lago here in Florida as high as $739 million when it should have been closer, she said, to $75 million. Now, in response, Eric Trump tweeted earlier this afternoon, "If you're interested in selling Mar-a-Lago for $75 million, I'm first in line." Mar-a-Lago is arguably one of the most valuable properties in the United States. This assertion is absolutely asinine. And former President Trump also fired back, posting this on his Truth social media. Another witch hunt by a racist Attorney General, Letitia James, who failed in her run for governor, getting almost zero support from the public, and now is doing poorly against Law and Order AG candidate, highly respected Michael Henry. Never thought this case would be brought until I saw her really bad poll numbers. She is a fraud who campaigned on a Get Trump platform, despite the fact that the city is one of the crime and murder disasters of the world under her watch, end quote. Now, Trump's attorney called the AG's claims meritless and dismissed them as politically motivated. AG James, however, went on to allege that Trump's also violated federal criminal law. She said her office is referring the criminal violations to the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York and the Internal Revenue Service. Greta?
John Huddy, thank you. Earlier, I spoke with an Emeritus Professor at Harvard Law School, Alan Dershowitz, about the new lawsuit. Professor Dershowitz, it's quite an impressive document. It's a lot of pages. And in trying to sort of break this down, it seems to me, not to oversimplify it, but the allegation is that it has to do with the value of his company and all his properties. And he and his family accused of undervaluing it when it comes to taxes, so they didn't have to pay much taxes, and then evaluating it when they wanted to get loans so they could use it to leverage the loans. But it is quite a long document. What do you think about this?
Well, what I think is that Letitia James should never have been responsible for bringing this investigation. She campaigned on the platform of getting Trump, of making sure that they got him and the family. And if she doesn't get him, if she doesn't find something against him, she won't be reelected. So her whole electoral prospects turn on this. This is not a strong case. Let me tell you why. Why haven't the banks sued him? They have just as good auditors, just as good ability to value something. Let's take 40 Wall Street, which I know you've probably been there. It's a nice, beautiful building. He evaluated it twice as much for getting a loan as was assessed. Now, can't the bank go and do their own assessment? Why does the Attorney General have to help one of the largest banks in the world do its due diligence and do its business? A jury is going to have a very, very hard time on that. As far as the taxes are concerned, that's the IRS and state tax authorities. That's not Letitia James. But she should not be bringing this case. And if I were Trump's lawyer, I'm not. But if I were, I would be making a motion to recuse and disqualify her, to turn the investigation over to a special prosecutor, a special master. And if I lost in front of the trial judge, that's an appealable, mandamusable motion that you can bring to a court of appeals. This is not the way American justice should work. Politicians running for office on the promise to get somebody, then getting that person, and then telling us, look, we have this thick document, read the evidence. I don't know whether the evidence doesn't support it. I know this. Prosecutors are supposed to exercise neutral, objective discretion. We can't expect that from a woman who ran on a campaign to get Trump. Look, I like Letitia James as a person. She's a very nice person. She's a very good politician. She should not be investigating Donald Trump.
All right, what I probably should have started this with is a full disclosure, which I've said a few other times, is that a very close relative of mine works for her. Having said that, let me go back to this. This is not a criminal case. This is a civil case. So the penalty is basically money or a license to do business, right? I mean, nobody's going to jail on this.
Well, she's referred the case to prosecutors, and if prosecutors decide that there should be an investigation and they're neutral, they should do that. But they should not rely on anything that Letitia James' office has put forward. This has to be started again by a neutral prosecutor. And it is civil, but it could become criminal. But this is money, $250 million plus. They can't ever be on boards or corporations or whatever. It would destroy the business. Look, if he deserves it, if he's guilty of this, of fraud, civil fraud, a legitimate investigation ought to prove that. But I'm suspicious because the banks haven't sued him, at least haven't done it in a very public way. And I just don't see the Attorney General's job as protecting big banks who failed to do due diligence. Look, if you and I were buying an apartment and we saw the apartment was listed for $1 million, and we went on Zillow and we saw it was only worth $500,000, we have the ability to look at that. Imagine what banks have the ability to do. They can go into the deepest investigation to see what the value is, how much per square feet. I just don't think the Attorney General's job is to protect big banks.
As an aside, if you and I were buying an apartment, you'd have some explaining to do to your wife, who I know, and I'd have some explaining to do to my husband if we do buy that apartment together. But as an aside, this case is probably going to go on for what, 2 or 3, 4 years? Is it going to go on forever?
Well, the important thing for Letitia James was the press conference. So for her, that part of the case is now over. Yeah, the investigation will take a long time. Some aspects of it require a jury trial. Some aspects of it seem like they're more in equity and don't require a jury trial. There'll be a lot of litigation. There's also a possibility here that the case could be settled. $250 million sounds like a lot of money to you and me. It's not a lot of money to Donald Trump. And if he can avoid a complete and thorough exposure of everything that it's alleged that he did, paying $100 million and having one of his kids be disqualified from being on the board might not be a bad settlement. So don't take that off the table. That's a possibility. But I think, knowing Trump, I think he's going to litigate.
Professor Dershowitz, thank you very much for joining me, sir.
Thank you.